Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Wayne Besson, the Executive Director of Truth Wins Out. If you haven't heard of it yet, they educate the world on the harm caused by destructive ex-gay conversion programs while fighting to eliminate anti-LGBTQ prejudice and discrimination. Before we begin, remember, if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Now, hi, Wayne, and welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. It's a very important topic everyone should know about, and I appreciate the opportunity to share about it.
Absolutely, Wayne. And we thank you for coming here today and sharing your story as well, right? Because from what I understood, Truth Wins Out and your stories are quite intertwined, right? I think it all begins and drives from your experiences. So is it okay if we touch base on that first right off so we can tell people what happened and what motivated the beginning of Truth Wins Out?
Sure, I had just graduated high school. It was 1988, and I was terrified of coming out of the closet. And so I finally got up the courage. I sat my parents down. I said, Mom, Dad, I have something important to tell you. And my mom looks at me and said, Did you get your girlfriend pregnant? And I'm thinking, You're going to wish that in about 5 seconds. And I said, Mom, Dad, I'm gay. And my dad said, You still like sports, don't you? And so, I mean, I knew there was going to be a long educational process. And there was progress happening over the subsequent weeks until my parents saw a tape in the bookstore called Gay and Unhappy. And it was really the weirdest tape. Half of it was like an anti-gay Enya with this very soft music. And the other half was a subliminal tape with a guy saying, You love women. You love the way they smell. You love the way they taste. And it was just the craziest, bizarre thing you've ever heard in your life. And at that point, I was mad. My parents were ripped off by con artists, exploiting our ignorance and their fear. And I said, you know what? People need to learn about these organizations to show how they are ripping people off, how they don't work, and they are taking advantage of people's pain and suffering when someone comes out. And I didn't think about it after that for a good 10 years. And then I was hired at the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ organization in the United States of America. Within a month of me working there, the religious right launched this massive advertising campaign saying people could pray away the gay. And because I was new, I was able to go to their press conferences and get information for us. And that started my journey into fighting ex-gay conversion programs. And since then, I've written 2 books on it and started Truth Wins Out to fight back. And we've had an enormous amount of success at exposing these organizations as frauds and putting many of them out of business. Sadly, though, there's a lot more work to do. I don't think this work ever ends. There's no finish line because as long as there's prejudice and discrimination, these groups will take advantage of those who are suffering and looking for answers in the wrong places.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing your story, and sharing these details. I feel like we, some of us are lucky enough to have not gone through this, like this ex-gay conversion. And we have no idea of what it can do and how people get in touch with this. I've heard of it, that some things like this happen in Brazil as well. And I wish it did not happen anymore. And I kind of was eluded that we were, staying away from that one step at a time. But from what you said, it's not like this at all. It's still happening. What is the scene, let's say, what's happening in the United States right now?
Well, as I mentioned in 1998, there was that big campaign. It was very public on television. There were commercials, full page ads in the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today. And they were trying to persuade the masses that you could change. Well, because we exposed many of their spokespeople as frauds, and many of them also came out and said, yeah, this stuff doesn't work, they went underground. And now they have come back like a phoenix rising with mega churches, evangelical churches in the United States of America. Unfortunately, because these churches are very wealthy, these groups are more well-funded than ever. And they are staging a comeback. they are hurting primarily people within these evangelical churches. But that's, if you think about that, that's millions of Americans. So this is happening unlike before, where it was very public. It's happening under the radar. But I think it's fair to say they've had a major comeback right under our noses. And the time now is to fight back and help people escape these organizations before too much harm is done. Because, like we always like to say, for every hour they spend in ex-gay conversion programs, they'll have to spend 10 hours with a real psychologist undoing the damage.
Wow, I had no idea of this, I don't know if I call it a statistic because,
Uh-huh.
but it's crazy. I again helps us put in perspective the size of the damage, the extension of the damage that this can cause to a person. It must be absolutely traumatizing. And how is Truth Wins Out been able so far to help people that are either going through this maybe or to keep people away from that?
We've done many different things. First of all, we tell the stories of survivors, the people who went through this and say, this didn't work and this ruined my life. Oh, we have the largest video catalog in the world of survivors, church leaders, parents, mental health experts speaking out about this in our YouTube channel, the Truth Wins Out YouTube channel, and also truthwinsout.org. So a lot of it is education. We've also written 2 books on it. My latest that came out in 2023 is called Lies with a Straight Face. And that, I think it's quite comprehensive and tells the whole story of how destructive these groups are and how to get out of them. We have also testified on bills to ban conversion therapy for minors in certain states, although that's not as effective as people would like to think because there's loopholes due to religion. And we also have, in many cases, exposed the leaders of these groups as frauds. I photographed the leader of Focus on the Family in Exodus, John Paulk, many years ago in a gay bar. We exposed the leader of Jerry Falwell on the American Family Association and the founder of National Coming Out of Homosexuality Day as a fraud. We've done that many, many times and shown the people who say they've changed really haven't changed at all. And we've also done a lot of media advocacy. So we're quite active on several different fronts. But I will say the most effective is education. People can hear the stories of those survivors and medical and mental health experts and who say what they have seen is so harmful and they don't want to see anyone else go through it. The evidence is overwhelming. I mean, every major ex-gay conversion organizations has had to shut down since I've started this or rebrand. The most famous, of course, is Exodus International. They were the largest ex-gay organization in the world. And their leader said that 99.99% of the people who went through it had not changed. We have a publication. We did in-depth interviews, both video and written interviews with the former ex-gay leaders on a publication at Truth Wins Out or in our resources called To the Dark Side and Back, which gives a vivid example of why they said they changed in the first place due to societal pressure and why they now say nobody under any circumstances should enter an ex-gay conversion program.
I think the phrase for this is you cannot fix something that is not broken, right?
And you
Like
cannot heal something that's not sick.
absolutely. So there is no way that a program, even if it's not like this, it's gonna fix anything because there is nothing to heal in this perspective.
Right.
So
The American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychiatric Association says that attempts to change sexual orientation cause anxiety, depression, and self-destructive behavior, which of course includes suicide. So why would anybody want to put their child into something that can cause such irreversible damage? The American Medical Association agrees, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. I can go on and on. Every respected medical and mental health organization in the world rejects ex-gay conversion therapy for the quackery that it truly is.
wow. And we're going to add the links that you mentioned, that to Truth Wins Out and your YouTube channel, so people can easily access it and learn more from it. I feel like there's so much information on your website, and that can be so, so helpful, not for just those that need help directly, but for those that also know someone that might be in a situation that they could be better assisted, let's say. So thanks for sharing it so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way these groups work psychologically is they say, oh, it doesn't work for everyone, but if you work really hard, you can change. And of course, everyone says, oh, I'm that person. Oh, yeah, I'm really determined. I want to change. And that is how they trick people and fool them. And it's so psychologically damaging because what they're really doing is they're blaming the victim when it doesn't work, and it never works. It always fails. There was no happy endings. They call it a journey, but it's more like riding around on a stationary bike in a cul-de-sac going nowhere fast. So I highly recommend anyone or any parent thinking of enrolling their child in this to do their research and find out the truth about how almost all of these organizations have shut down. And their former leaders, the people who wrote the books on this topic, say, yeah, my book was nonsense. It does not work. I was simply coerced into saying I had changed because I was made to believe I'm going to hell, made to believe that no one would love me, because that's their currency and trade is shame.
And I love that you bring this word trade, right? Because in the end of the day, it's about like selling something to people, I believe. But not diving into it, but looking at this as a part of the context, right? What are the challenges that you face when trying to advocate against these camps, against these programs? What are the challenges that you also face when trying, you mentioned some bills, right? Some trying to change it in a more bureaucratical level, or in the law side of stuff. So what are the challenges that come in that area as well?
Well, those who don't agree with changing the law, for example, cite free speech. But this is not free speech in the context of conversion therapy. Therapy is an actual medical practice, and medical practices can be regulated. For example, a cardiologist can't tell someone who just had a triple bypass that it's okay to eat 3 meals a day of hamburgers and French fries and milkshakes. They would be sued for malpractice. They can't say, well, that's my free speech. No, you're a doctor. You can't do that. It's destructive. You're actually killing the person. It's malpractice. And that's what conversion therapy is. It's malpractice disguised as medicine. It's no free speech there. You can regulate medical expertise, and this isn't some talk show host or uh, some politician who can spew anything. These are medical doctors. They're supposed to be experts. No, they can't tell clients things that are going to harm them, because they first of all, for any doctor, it's do no harm. That's the first dictum. I mean, do no harm for when for the Hippocratic Oath. And so we do run into that, people who confuse uh, medical licensing issues with with speech, and when it does not apply in that context. We also have to deal with religion, that people don't care about facts and they're willing to the proverbial fire hose of lies to support their religious viewpoint. And no matter when you have people like that, it doesn't matter what you say. It's you're wrong, you're going to hell. I mean, there's no factual way you can fight such assertions. And so they do a lot of religious speak and using guilt and shame, and also saying things like, oh, you're going to humiliate your parents. So we have to fight against those techniques a lot, those mind games that they play. It's not easy because religion, most of this is religion. I mean, the therapy part's maybe, 5 to 10% of it. 95% is religious. Let's be honest about it. So you're dealing, trying to put facts forward against something that's not necessarily rational, which is faith. And sometimes it's why you have to use emotion a lot with people telling their stories so people can get cut through. If you facts alone, when you're dealing with religious fundamentalism, aren't always going to work. So you have to tie that in with also people telling their stories of what they went through, so people can identify with someone who said, yeah, I went through this exorcism, and I went through fasting and beating myself, and doing and all these celibacy and all this, or marrying somebody I didn't love or wasn't attracted to. Someone telling the story can break through a lot. So we have to combine the facts with um, appealing to, through people's experiences. But it's difficult because when people have very deep beliefs, they don't want to be challenged necessarily, and they're going to have to give up an entire belief system and find a new religion. I might not have to go from Christian to, an atheist, but they have to, if they're not going to lose their religion, they're going to need to find a friendlier one, or it's going to be the end of them. It's going to end up with a very unhappy ending from what we have seen.
Oh, I get speechless when I think about the strain that is this cause, because giving up your faith in a sense, like, or being so disappointed but by what happened in within your religion, within what you believe, it is a very huge destruction of part of our souls, I think. So
Yeah,
we're not talking about something light here. We're talking about shaken core beliefs,
right.
and I cannot see someone recovering easily from such a rupture,
It's
I would
very
say.
difficult. It's very difficult. But what I do
Yeah.
tell these people is I said, does your religion have missionaries? And they go, yeah. And what do missionaries do? Well, what do they go out and they tell people to go change their religion? Well, people do it every day. Your religion asks people to do that. It happens. It's very difficult. It can be painful. But the alternative is living a lie and not being yourself, uh, being an actor your whole life. But unfortunately, like all shows, the production must end and the actor must take his or her mask off and be themselves again, or they will die inside. And those are your options. And I think uh, most people don't want to live like that. That's not a healthy existence. So the question then is, are you going to do it immediately and live authentically, or are you going to waste 20, 30 years of your life living this lie before you eventually come out anyway, like many of these ex-gay leaders? There's another victims in this, and probably some of the most tragic victims um, that we have to deal with are the spouses. They end up marrying these men and women that say they've changed, even though they know they haven't. And they didn't ask for this. They think the person loves them or is attracted to them. And then they find out a decade, 2 decades later that not only was the person trying to change their spouse's life was a lie, but their marriage was. And that's even harder to deal with, knowing that you were used as a pawn. So somebody could adhere to strictures in their religion that were unfair and cruel. But we see that all the time, and that's not talked about enough. Even fundamentalists are like, "Oh yeah, well you should try things. What's the harm in it?" Okay, well go speak to the wives I've spoken to. Go speak to the husbands that have lived this lie along with them and realized their marriage was a fraud, that it wasn't real, that they've been living in a fantasy world. That's very. You think it's hard for the ex-gay, person to realize that there was living a false reality. Imagine the spouse who didn't ask for any of this and was trapped in this narrative. Very tragic. And I think people, even fundamentalists, need to think of it. Is it really worth destroying all those lives to support a fraud, something that's not true at all, to support a fantasy world? Is it more important? Are people more important, or is promoting your dogma, your doctrine more important?
Wayne, all of this that we have been talking are paramount, I believe, to keep the discussions of LGBTQ plus rights, and saving lives and all of this. It goes beyond the discussion, right? It's about actually going out and staying first alert to what's going on, and then being able to talk about it.
Mhm.
But are there other ways that our listeners might get involved and help you guys keep going and keep fighting this?
Absolutely. First of all, it takes money to fight these guys. We're fighting very wealthy mega churches. And I encourage people to donate to truthwinsout.org. You can purchase our book, Lies with a Straight Face, that gives you the entire history of these organizations. And if you have been through this or know somebody who has, contact us. Tell your story. That's what really helps people with the educational effort. Finally, if you know of an ex-gay leader who is a hypocrite and not living as advertised, and you have evidence of this, please let us know. Share this with us, because exposing these con artists for the frauds they are allows people to know that what they're peddling isn't true. And it puts these organizations out of business. So again, education, helping us financially, and also finally exposing these leaders. If you put all of that together and you can participate in that, you've done a great service to both our organization and LGBTQ people worldwide.
Thank you so, so much for joining us today. When this was a wonderful conversation and very much needed one.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. We need to let everyone know about these organizations and what they can do to help. And I am honored to appear on this platform with you to share my thoughts.
Thank you. And for everyone else listening or watching us on YouTube right now, also, thank you so much for staying with us for this more episode. And remember, if you like this conversation, share it with your friends, like it in the platforms, because that helps us spread the word about the importance of Truth Wins Out. You can check their page in the description of this episode, reach out, learn more about this. I feel like the more we learn, the more educated we get about this, and self-educated sometimes, guys. We don't need to wait someone to tell us what to do. It's the best way to move forward and change the realities that we live in. So thank you for staying, and bye. I'll see you in the next episode.